Hi everybody, Mr. Cully here. Today I want to talk to you about electron configuration. This is a lesson that I put together to kind of simplify a very abstract concept. So electron configuration, the word configuration means some sort of arrangement or kind of like how the electrons are set up. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today is how electrons are set up within an atom. All right. So before this, we were using the Bohr model. The Bohr model is very, very neat and orderly for us to use on paper because it's 2D. You know, we're used to drawing those like orbitals that just circle the nucleus, things of that nature. This is an example where we're going to be diving into the atom, looking at it from a 3D point of view. Okay, so just know that today we are looking at it from a 3D point of view. We're looking at the quantum model. We're not usually doing that, but in this section we are. All right. So electron configurations describe the arrangement and distribution of electrons around an atom. That's all it means. Just a fancy word for saying it's going to describe the arrangement and distributions of electrons. So don't freak out. I'm not going to have you memorize these, but I want you to look at these pictures because what we are seeing right here, what atoms truly look like. Now, we typically think of atoms as, you know, the Jimmy Neutron thing where the electrons are swirling around and they've got these fixed orbits. That's not how it is at all. So this is actually what they look like in the sense of everywhere you see these pictures, the colors represents a cloud of probability of where the electron could be. So the electron could be anywhere in the sphere, or could be anywhere in these yellow dumbbell looking shapes, or anywhere in these blue looking shapes or green looking shapes. So these are all different configurations of where an electron might be in an atom. All right, so these are based on the quantum model of the atom. Remember, before we were using the Bohr model where it looks like rings around a 2D circle, which is the nucleus. This is more so looking at what does it look like 3D. All right, so it looks kind of daunting, but let's break it down. So these are called orbitals. Electrons exist in regions of space called orbitals where electrons are most likely to be found. So I just mentioned that these are just clouds of probability. We can't exactly know where an electron is, so instead we have computerized models that help us understand where an electron is likely to be. So that's what these are, computerized models helping us see where electrons are most likely to be found. There are four types of orbitals. There's the s orbital, the p orbitals, the d orbitals, and the f orbital. So the s orbital is that sphere up there, the red sphere. All s orbitals are spherical like that. There are three different p orbitals. You can see right there. There's one for each axis. They're all dumbbell shaped, but they're all oriented differently. You can see there's three different ones there. There are five d orbitals. Four of them look kind of similar, and then that middle one is like a donut with two balls. It looks kind of weird. And then f, these ones are pretty complex as well. So there's seven f orbitals, five d orbitals, three p orbitals, and one s orbital. So that's important to note. We're to look at that here in a second. Each orbital, okay, each one of these pictures is an orbital. Each one of these can hold a maximum of 2 electrons. Important to note, each orbital can hold a max of 2 electrons. There is one s orbital total, okay? Well, if there's only one s orbital and it can hold 2 electrons, then the s orbitals altogether can hold a total of 2 electrons since there's only one of them. Contrast with the p orbitals. Each one of these can hold 2. So the p orbitals all together can hold a total of 6 electrons because 2, 4, 6. All right, keep that in mind. There are 5d orbitals which can hold a total of 10 electrons. So since each orbital in the d orbitals can hold 2 electrons, each one of these is going to hold 2. Well, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. The d orbitals can hold a maximum of 10. And the 7f orbitals can hold a total of 14. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. All right. We will be getting into that here in a second. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. All right. Orbitals are going to be associated or assigned a specific energy level. So I promise this will make sense here in a second when we're going to actually practice it. But the first energy level only contains the s orbital. All right, only contains the s orbital. The second energy level contains the s and now the p orbitals as well. So the first one is only s. The second energy level contains the s and p orbitals. The third energy level contains the same s and p orbitals, but now adds the d orbitals. And the fourth energy level contains the s, p, d, and f orbitals. All right. So Each time you add an energy level, you're essentially adding a new set of orbitals into the mix. So for example, just to kind of show you what this would look like, we noticed that in the first, the second, the third, and the fourth energy level all contain s orbitals. Well, the s orbital in the first energy level looks like this. It's just a very small sphere. The s orbital in the second energy level looks like this, just a bigger sphere. And the s orbital in the third energy level is an even bigger sphere. So we can see that it just gets bigger every time, kind of like when we thought about energy levels before. In the Bohr model, when we draw energy levels, it would just be rings, right? It would be rings that just got bigger and further away from the nucleus. Not too different from what we're seeing right here. It's just getting further and further away from the nucleus as the orbital goes into a higher energy level. All right, I will explain this later. All right, so the electron orbital diagram. Let's just take a look at this real quick. It looks kind of confusing. You've never seen it before. What I want you to note is that anytime you see a number, that's denoting the energy level. So like the 1 down here, that means the first energy level. The 2 up here means the second energy level. The 4 means the fourth. The 3 means the third. The 5th means the 5th energy level. Whenever you see a number, that notates an energy level. Now, anytime you see a letter, that is the orbital that we're talking about. So S is the S orbital, P is the P orbital, D is the D orbital, and the F orbital is not on here. So this box down here, each box represents an orbital, all right? So this box represents the S orbital at the first energy level. This box represents the S orbital at the second energy level. These 3 boxes represent the 3 different orbitals at the 3 different p orbitals at the second energy level. All right, so each box is an orbital in a sense. We're not looking at the shapes anymore, but each box represents an orbital, a p orbital at the second energy level, and so on. So these guys up here would each represent a d orbital at the third energy level. So that's what this is all meaning. Well, if you look, it says increasing energy. As you go up, these orbitals increase in energy. Now, you would like it to be kind of really nice pattern. So it goes 1s, 2s, 2p, 3s, 3p, 4s, 3d, and then 4p. Like, why does it go from 4s to 3d to 4p? Well, it does turn out that the 3d orbital has a higher energy than the 4s orbital. Why that is a little bit more complicated, but just for this class, understand that it's not going to go in the way that you necessarily think. All right. We are going to use this diagram to allocate an atom's electrons. So I'm going to give an example, but there's 3 rules that we need to understand before we start filling this orbital diagram. All right, they kind of sound funny, but we're to use all of them here to see how they're used. The Aufbau principle means that electrons enter the lowest energy orbital first. So basically, when we are allocating these electrons, it's going to start down here. It's going to start down here and work its way up. We need to fill these boxes before we reach the top. So we fill these boxes from bottom to top. We can't go from top to bottom. We can't go from middle to low to high. It's got to be from bottom to top. That's all that this principle is saying. Next one is the Pauli exclusion principle. An orbital, aka one of these squares, can hold no more than 2 electrons. All right, we already said that. And both electrons must spin in different directions. All right, this is new to us. They must spin in different directions. What is spin? Well, electrons have to have something called spin. And basically, when you think about electrons, they're kind of crazy. There's a lot that we can learn about them. But just understand that for them to work and for quantum physics to hold up, they must spin in different directions. So we're to denote each electron in the box by an arrow. All right, I'll show you that here in a second. And then lastly, Hund's rule. Each orbital must have a single electron at its level before doubling up. All right, before doubling up. Basically what that means is if we're filling these boxes, each box must contain 1 electron before we add a second one to any of these boxes. So if you're working at 1 energy level, you can't add a second electron until each box is filled up with at least 1. So let's do an example. Let's do the most basic element, and that would be hydrogen. So let's take a look. Where's my mouse? There it is. So hydrogen. Hydrogen has 1 proton, which means a neutral atom of hydrogen would have 1 electron. All right, where is that electron going to go according to the orbital diagram? According to these rules, where is that electron going to be allocated to? Well, I know it's got to go to the lowest energy orbital first. All right, so it would be in this one down here, the 1s orbital. All right, remember, I'm going to denote an electron as an arrow. So I'm going to draw that electron down here as an arrow. And I'm going to draw it up. All right, we'll just use up and down arrows for this diagram. So that is denoted, that's an electron. That arrow represents one electron. Well, hydrogen only has one electron, so that is all that we can do for this diagram. If it had more, then we could fill in more, but hydrogen only has one electron, so that's it. So now I want to write a notation for this. Where's the electron at? Well, it's in the s orbital of the first energy level. So we write 1s. It's in the s orbital of the first energy level. And how many are in there? Oh, well, only one is in there. So I put an exponent up here. Now, it's not like an exponent you think of math, but it does go up in where the exponent would be. So this is hydrogen's electron configuration. Let's back this up. What do each of these mean? The one right here, that means that it's in the first energy level. First energy level. That S means it's in the s orbital. And that 1 means that there's only one electron in that orbital at that energy level. So this tells me that I have one electron in the s orbital at the first energy level. All right. That is what this notation is telling me. All right. So let's go one element further. Let's look at helium. Helium. All right. So helium has 2 protons. So a neutral atom of helium is going to have 2 electrons. So, well, I'm just going to erase that. I don't really have to, but I'm going to. Well, I need to allocate these 2 electrons somewhere. Well, they got to go on the lowest energy level. So I'm going to fill my 1 electron, and now I need to add my second electron. Well, I denoted that with an arrow going the opposite direction. Why? Because remember, both electrons must spin in different directions. That's what the Pauli exclusion principle tells me. They got to spin in different directions. So that's why I draw these arrows moving opposite directions. All right. So what is my notation look like? Well, I've got 2 electrons in the s orbital at the first energy level. So it would be 1s again, but this time it's going to be 1s2. What this tells me is I've got 2 electrons in the s orbital at the first energy level, 1s2. And that's it. That is the electron configuration for helium. That's it. All right, let's do another. Let's go one more. Let's look at lithium. Lithium has 3 electrons. And, I really don't have to erase these. Why? Because I know that the 2 of lithium's electrons are first going to be added to this box. So I just need to add one more. Well, can I add a third one to this box? No, because each orbital, each square can hold no more than 2 electrons. So my third one is going to go in the next lowest energy level, which would be the 2s. So, boom, there's my third electron. So what would my notation be now? Now that I've allocated all my electrons for lithium, what's it going to look like? Well, again, I have 2 electrons in the s orbital at the first energy level. So I'm going to have the 1s2 again. But this time I also have 1 in the s orbital at the second energy level. So it's going to be 1s2, 2s1. Okay, that's it. I've now allocated, I've written down where all my electrons are. I've got 1 in the s orbital at the second energy level, and I've got 2 in the s orbital at the first energy level. That's it. That is the electron configuration for lithium. All right. Let's do a bigger atom now. Let's do nitrogen. So nitrogen has 7 electrons. So if I'm going to write my 7, I've got my 2 down here already. Actually, let's just restart. I've got my 7 electrons. So there's 1, there's 2. There's 3, there's 4. Now I'm moving to the 2p. I gotta allocate 3 more. So there's 5. Well, can I put another in this box for 6? Can I do that? No, because of Hund's rule. Hund's rule says that each orbital must have a single electron at its level before doubling up. So what that means is I can't start doubling up at this level until each box at that level already has 1 in it. So I need to move to the next box to add an electron. So I'm up to 2, 4, 6, and I need to add my 7th. Boom, there's my 7th. So I can't double up at this level until each one of these has 1 in it already. That's what Hund's rule tells me. All right, so now I've used and I've experienced all 3 rules. So what would this look like? Well, I've got 2 in my s orbital at the first energy level, 1s2. I've got 2 in my s orbital at the second energy level, 2s2. And I've got 3 in the p orbital at the second energy level, so 2p3. So this is my electron configuration for nitrogen. Okay. Let's do another one. So let's look at the periodic table real quick. Let's discard that. So if I'm looking at the periodic table, pull it up here. Let's do chlorine. All right, chlorine's got 17 electrons. So I'm going to pull this back up. Chlorine's got 17. So if chlorine, which I'll just do Cl, has 17 electrons, then let's start filling them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I can double up. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. All right. So now I have allocated all my electrons from the lowest to the highest I could go. Each orbital has only 2 electrons at most, and they each spin in different directions if there are 2. And each orbital must have a single electron at its level before doubling up. Okay, I followed all my rules. I've allocated them correctly. Now I write the notation. So I'm going to have 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, and then how many are my 3p? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3p5. And now I am done. I have written my electron configuration for chlorine. That is it. This is, in a sense, my fingerprint for chlorine. This is chlorine's fingerprint of where all of its electrons are. I could also go backwards. If I gave you this, then you could, in a sense, look and find, okay, what element would this be? Well, if it's a 3p5, then I can figure out where it's located. So I showed you this other slide before, this one, okay? Well, that ended in 3p5. Well, my 3p's are actually right here. So that's my 3p1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be whatever element is here. Well, if you go look at the periodic table, it's going to be where chlorine is. And there it is. Boom. So we could actually go backwards using electron configurations as well. All right, let's do one more. Let's do iron. So iron has 26 electrons. And that just means I'm going to fill up. So another way that I write this is I halves it. So I don't really draw the full arrow, but I draw like a half arrow. You could do this too, but it looks like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Okay. Now I have allocated all my electrons, and I got to ask myself, all right, what's my notation going to be? Well, it's going to be just like before. I go all the way up. So 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p6, 4s2, and now in my last level, my highest level here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3d6. And that is the electron configuration for iron. All right, so this is day 1. This is what we are working with today, is just going from what element do I have to its, in a sense, we call this its electron configuration. I call it its fingerprint of where all the electrons are allocated.